Hey, it's Katie, and welcome back to my booktube channel. Today's video is my April wrap-up and my recent reads video, so this is coming out a little bit late. Basically, I did a recent reads video for the first couple weeks of April, which I will link for you guys. And then I am doing this video for the last couple weeks of April, and then I'll do like an overview of the month. And then I'm also going to talk about my recent reads for the first couple weeks of May, so let's jump into it. In April, I ended up reading 14 books and a little bit over 5,000 pages, which is a little bit slow for me, but still pretty good. So the books I read toward the end of April that I haven't talked about yet, there's only a couple of them, but the first one is The Heir by Sophie Lark. This is the first book in the Kingmaker series. So basically, Sophie Lark has a series called the Brutal Birthright series, where you get 6 different romances, and Kingmakers follows those couples' children. And Kingmakers is basically this academy where all of these mafia heirs and children go, and they are basically taught to, it says, control, dominate, infiltrate, and kill. So this one follows Leo and Anna, and they are best friends. So this is a best friends to lovers book, and it's so good. It's actually really thick as well, and I really enjoyed it. Something I love about Sophie Lark's books is that she has a playlist at the beginning, but also she will put in the text where she wants each song to be played. So I'm trying to find an example of that for you. I can never find them when I'm trying to talk about them in videos. But here she has the song right in the text, so you know exactly when to play the songs. And then she also includes family trees at the beginning, which is really helpful because you meet so many characters and you know that you recognize the last name, or you know that you kind of recognize them, but you don't know whose kid it is. So this is just really helpful to follow along. I really liked this book. I love the atmosphere, and I can't wait to continue the series. Oh, I gave this 4 stars, by the way. Then I read The Roommate by Rosie Danon, and this was a library book, so I don't own it, but I will pop the cover up. And basically, all I remember from this book is that it is about a girl who moves across the country because I can't remember if she's running from something, like a mistake she made or what, but basically her crush is like, hey, I have a room available for you, and she's had a crush on this guy since she was really little, so she moves across the country to be his roommate, and when she gets there, realizes that he did a bait and switch, and he's not actually going to be living there. He rented out his other room as well, so she ends up getting there, meeting her roommate, who is a complete stranger, and she ends up finding out that he is actually a porn star. And so you get the roommate trope, you get forced proximity. The fact that he's a porn star definitely makes it very interesting, but it's a very, interesting romance. It's pretty funny at times and also very, sweet, and it also really focuses on how the porn industry sometimes doesn't treat its workers very well, and you get to see that whole aspect of it as well, and I feel like I learned a lot through that. So it actually is a pretty good book. I gave it 3.5 stars, so I enjoyed it. After that, I randomly got the urge to read a book that had been on my shelf for years, and that is The Bromance Book Club by Lissa K. Adams. And I'm so glad I picked it up. I liked this way more than I thought I would, and I will definitely be continuing the series. There's at least 4 or 5 books at this point, so I'm very behind, but it's super cute. So basically, the Bromance Book Club is this secret book club where all of these guys who are, some of them are well-known baseball players, some of them are businessmen, and they basically have this book club to read romance books and figure out how to treat their women the way they want to be treated, whether that's in the bedroom or outside of the bedroom, just they are learning tips and tricks, and I adore that concept. And this book follows, I can't remember his name, follows Gavin, and basically he finds out that his wife has been faking it every time, and he kind of flips out about that. and doesn't handle it very well. So his wife ends up asking for a divorce. There's other things going on too. That's not like the main reason. But basically, Gavin joins this book club because he's trying to save his marriage. And this is the first book I've really read like that, where it's already a married couple and somebody's trying to save the marriage. And I really liked it. I feel like he really tried to go above and beyond to show that he cared, and I was rooting for him the whole time. I feel like the whole book club concept is just really funny and also adorable, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked getting to know these characters, and I'm really excited to see who else like these stories are about in the future. But it's really good. There is a lot of miscommunication in here, which is a little bit frustrating because miscommunication, I feel like, is nobody's favorite trope. But it's actually done really well because that is like the whole source of the issue of their marriage. So you really see them like trying to work on that. So I feel like it was done in a way that wasn't like super annoying to read about, but just know that there is a lot of miscommunication. But I still gave this book 4 stars. The book I read after that was Those Three Little Words by Megan Quinn, and this was a hockey romance and also had the pregnancy trope in it, but that's not something I typically read about, but that was like the entire point of the book, so I wanted to give it a chance, and I enjoyed it more than I expected to. Basically, we have, I can't remember their names. I'm really bad remembering characters' names, but basically, this is like a teammate's little sister romance, or brother's teammate, however you want to word it. I'm never really good at explaining that. But basically, they have a one-night stand, and she ends up getting pregnant, so her brother kind of like freaks out and is like, fine, you got her pregnant, you're gonna move in with her, you're gonna help her take care of this baby, like, this is your fault, this is your responsibility now. And so there's forced proximity because they end up having to move in together, and it's really interesting. And like watching her go through her pregnancy is really interesting also. Sometimes I felt like she was a lot because of what she's going through with her pregnancy, but I've also never been pregnant, so I don't really know, and I'm not here to judge that. So it could be accurate. I'm not really sure. But it definitely kept me on my toes because I didn't know what was going to come out of her mouth next. But it was pretty cute. I really liked it. There was some like angst, kind of. I don't know if that's the right word to describe it. And there was miscommunication that I feel like could have been dealt with a little better, but I enjoyed it. Oh, I also feel like it could have been a lot shorter. I feel like I enjoyed the first like 70% of it, but like the last 30% kind of dragged on because it was actually a lot of pages for a romance. So I definitely think it could have been a little shorter, but I still gave it 3.5 stars. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even really remember this next book, but apparently the next one I read was Ruthless Bishop by Veronica Eden. I have to keep checking my notebook, but this was about, it was like supposed to be a bully romance, and also like the girl accidentally like sexts, that's hard to say, her bully, and they don't really know who the other person is for a little bit, but then he figures it out. That's really all I remember. It definitely didn't go the way that I planned. I feel like it had a lot of potential, but I didn't really enjoy it as much as I wanted to, and clearly I didn't really enjoy it because I don't really remember it. There was a lot of angst. It was a very dramatic plot line. I gave it 3 stars, but now looking back, I probably should have knocked it down to 2 stars because I definitely don't recommend this book at all. Okay, moving on to one I definitely remember. We have Serenading Heartbreak by Ella Fields, and I've had this book for almost a year now and finally had the motivation to read it, and I'm so glad that I did. This book does have a love triangle, but it is done in a way that I've never really read about before, like the way that the relationships kind of like overlap. And okay, there probably is cheating in here, so if that's not your thing, I wouldn't pick this up. I really can't remember because there were times where she wasn't really in a relationship with either of the guys, but I don't know. It was very confusing, kind of, but I don't think she cheated. I'm going to be honest. I don't remember. So if cheating's not your thing, I would just avoid it just to be safe. But that's not really the main point of this book. Basically, the first person that she falls in love with is her brother's best friend, and also a kid who I think lives across the street from her, and he comes over all the time. They kind of like bonded because he comes over sometimes when her brother's not home, so they kind of bond through that, and they were like childhood friends. And then he ends up moving away, I think. Let me see. Oh, I remember now. He can sing really well, and he ends up being in a band with her brother, and so they go on tour, and so nothing can really happen between them. So then while he's on tour, she goes off to college and meets the like star baseball player, and they end up falling in love. And then the first one comes back into the picture and complicates things. You get how this is going to go. And then that kind of keeps happening. Things keep getting in the way of her relationship with both of these guys, and you really get like pulled in both directions. I genuinely didn't know who I wanted her to be with, and even after reading it, I don't know who I want her to be with. Even though obviously you get an answer by the end of the book who she ends up with, but this just, the back of this says that, or wait, somewhere it says that it's like exquisite agony. Yeah, this love triangle is exquisite agony, and I feel like that is a great way to describe it because I couldn't put it down, but it's also so painful, and you also get so frustrated with a lot of the characters at times, but it was really good, so I gave it 4.5 stars. I don't really know how to describe it. I don't think I'm doing this book justice. I don't feel like I'm really being convincing to have you read this book, but there's a lot of angst, but I think it's worth it. You really go back and forth. Like I said, I don't really know who I wanted her to end up with, which is how I know it's a good love triangle, because typically with love triangles, there's a clear winner, but with this one, I still don't really know. There were some toxic elements, so be aware of that, but 4.5 stars, that's all I can say. And then the last book I read in April was Maggie Moves On by Lucy Score. This is my second Lucy Score book after Things We Never Got Over, and I really enjoyed this one as well. I gave it 5 stars. Basically, we have Maggie, who is a YouTuber, and she does like HGTV type videos. So she goes to find a really rundown property, and she makes videos about the process of rebuilding and remodeling everything, and then she sells it and moves on to some other place. And that's kind of her entire career. And then she goes to this small town and ends up buying like this, I don't know if it's a mansion, but it definitely feels like a mansion. And she hires a landscaper named Silas, and he is such a flirt. I just really love his personality. He's so charming and flirtatious, and they obviously are forced to spend a lot of time together because he works for her, but it's just such a cute story. I don't really know how to explain it. He also has a dog named Kevin, who is like the perfect comedic relief. Kevin causes all kinds of trouble, but he's so cute and I love him. But it's just a really sweet romance to watch them get to know each other, because obviously Maggie isn't used to staying in one place. She doesn't really have anybody she's close to in her life. And so creating connections with people in this town is very scary to her, but watching those connections happen is just so sweet, and I just really loved this story. I think it comes out in June. I'm not positive. I will pop up the release date here for you guys. Definitely check it out, especially if you have read Lucy Score and you adored it, or if you are just looking for a really sweet rom-com. It's just so good. April ended with something really crappy happening in my life, so in order to cope with that, I needed to reread one of my favorite books, so I reread Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. This is one of my favorite books of the entire year so far, and even after rereading it, I would love to read it again. I feel like I've talked about this before, but this is the second book in the Dreamland Billionaire series, and basically this series is about 3 brothers who are left an inheritance by their grandfather, and in order to get their inheritance, they have to complete a task. Declan's task is that he needs to get married and have an heir, and so he decides to do it as like an arranged marriage because he doesn't really have any interest in relationships. But on the day of the engagement party, he scares off the girl he was supposed to marry, so his assistant Iris volunteers in her place, and it's really interesting to watch them have to deal with this new dynamic of their relationship because they've worked together for years and they respect each other, but that's really as far as their relationship had gone. But now they have to live together, so there's a lot more forced proximity. It's definitely like grumpy sunshine, kind of. I don't know if you would consider Iris sunshine, but Declan's definitely grumpy. It's a slow burn, and it's just so good. I have so many tabs in here. I went a little bit overboard, but it's just, this book is so good. It makes you feel so many things. I laughed, I cried, I smiled, I got really angry at them sometimes, but it's so good. Iris is such a strong female lead, and watching her overcome obstacles just makes me so happy, and I highly recommend this book. After that, I read Twisted Hate by Anna Huang, which is the third book in the Twisted series, and this one's definitely my favorite. It is definitely enemies to lovers, and it's the kind of enemies to lovers where they never lose their banter. They are kind of mean to each other all the way through, and I loved that. It's also best friend's brother, which is always a fun trope to read about, but like I said, they have amazing banter. They also have really good like chemistry and sexual tension, and I had a good time with this one. Like I said, it's my favorite of that series so far, and I gave this book 4 stars. Also, the spice in this book is very good as well, and it opened my eyes to some kinks I would love to read more about. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely pick this one up. After that, I needed more comfort, so I reread another one of my faves, which is From Lukon with Love by Mariana Zapata. This book is pretty thick. It is a figure skating romance. I think I have a full review of this book, so if I do, I'll link that for you guys. But like I said, a figure skating romance, also enemies to lovers, and it's just really good because they are forced to be figure skating partners, and watching them try to work together even though they are mean to each other is so funny. But it's so good. Ivan and Jasmine have some of the best conversations I've ever read in books. It's just so deep and meaningful, and even though they're mean to each other, deep down they do care about each other, and just those conversations are very impactful for me, especially because Jasmine deals with a lot. She talks about dealing with bullying and harassment through social media. She struggles with her body image. She has a lot of mental health things going on. She also has a learning disability. So there's just a lot of things she has to overcome, and that just adds so much more meaning to this story. And also just, they're so cute together. I just adore this book. The next book I read was an arc I had called The Ohana Cottage by Megan Reinking. I think it's out already, but I gave this one 3 stars. It was pretty cute, but definitely not one of my favorites. This is about a girl who ends up going on a trip to Hawaii. She needs to get away for a while. She just got out of a relationship, and it was with somebody she's known her entire life. It was like an on and off again relationship, but this time she wants to be completely done with it, so she decides to just remove herself from the situation, and she basically rents this Airbnb from this guy who is super like reserved and broody. I don't know, I can't think of the right word right now. But he used to be in the military, and so now he is struggling to, acclimate to life again, and he also has PTSD, which I think is something that needs to be represented more in books. I don't really know too much about it, and it was really nice to see that representation. But like, other than that, there wasn't too much I really liked about this book. I kind of flew through it. I feel like there wasn't much substance to it. There was a little bit of fake dating, and it was cute. Like I said, it was cute. It takes place in Hawaii, which is a really fun backdrop. I feel like it might be a really cute like summer story, but it wasn't my favorite. I don't really have too much to say about it. After that, I read another arc called My Mechanical Romance, and I have to look at the author's name. Alexine Farrell Fulmuth? I'm really bad with names. Basically, it's the same author as The Atlas Six, but under a different pen name. I'm not sure which one is her actual name or which one is a pen name. But same author, which I thought was really cool. That's really what drew me to this book in the first place. This was another arc. I think it's out already, but it's really cute. It's like academic rivals to lovers, and also has women in STEM, which is really fun. So there is some really good representation from that. And I haven't read too many books about women in STEM, so I really love seeing that representation. But basically, our main character ends up joining like the robotics club, and it's really hard for her to fit in and for people to take her seriously. And you get to see her like struggle with that and overcome that, and it's just a really good story. You also get a romance along the way, which is really cute. This is just one of the cutest YA romances I've read this year. I haven't read too many YA romances, but I definitely enjoyed this one. I gave this 4 stars, and I think it's super cute. This next one is probably one of my favorites I've read this month so far, and that is Juniper Hill by Devney Perry. This is the second book in a companion series, and each book follows one of the Eden siblings. This one follows Knox and also Memphis. So Memphis is a single mother, and she comes to the small town of Quincy, Montana with her son, who's only a few months old, and she ends up working at the hotel in town, which the Edens own, and she doesn't have a place to stay, and the only place available is the loft or like garage thing that Knox owns and is right by his house. So they end up being neighbors essentially, and it's definitely really interesting because he's very grumpy at the beginning. He does not like to share his space, and she is struggling to take care of her child while also working and trying to get money and all that stuff. I'm not doing a very good job explaining this, but it is just super cute. Knox is a chef, so you get some food elements as well, and I just love the little family that comes out of this book. It's so sweet, and this is one of those books where when I was done, I had to just sit and like hug it for a little bit because I adore these characters and I wasn't ready to say goodbye yet. So I am really glad that this is part of a series, and I will probably see cameos of these characters in the next book, which is coming out sometime this year. So I will definitely be reading that. But I gave this one 5 stars. I loved it. The epilogue was everything. Like, this epilogue, I was not expecting it, but it just made me so happy. After that, I wanted to keep reading single-parent romances, so I ended up picking up Ignite by Melanie Harlow. This was my first Melanie Harlow book, but definitely won't be my last. I gave this book 4 stars. It is also a Grumpy Sunshine book. It's also an age gap romance, and they are also neighbors. So it combines a bunch. But the fun thing about this book is that it is a single dad romance, which I had never read before and I really enjoyed. So I also don't really like age gap romances typically, but this really made me enjoy it. So maybe I will dive into that trope a little bit more. But basically they are neighbors, and when he moves in, he has his 2 daughters with him, and they end up going to knock on the main character's door, which is how they all meet. The 2 little girls, by the way, are so cute. Those are my favorite characters of the book because you never know what's going to come out of their mouths next. They're so sweet and so funny, and they really keep you on your toes, and I loved them. But that's how they all met, and what I really liked about this book is that the main characters have this, like, mostly sexual relationship at first, and they don't want anything to come out of it. They're very like open about that, but watching them end up like caring about each other, and they also comfort each other without really meaning to, and I really liked it. I liked watching their relationship develop, and it was pretty good. I had a great time. I will definitely be reading more from Melanie Harlow. After that, I decided to switch things up a little bit and listened to an audiobook, which was The Enemy by Sarah Adams. This was kind of a second chance romance of sorts, and also like enemies to lovers. Basically, we have Ryan and June, who knew each other all throughout school and were part of the same friend group because their best friends were dating. And they basically made each other's lives hell, kind of. They were always mean to each other. They pulled pranks on each other. They were not nice to each other in high school. But on the last day of, the day of graduation, he leaned in and she thought he was going to kiss her. So she like tilted her head up to him and then he just walked away. And she has held a grudge for 10 years. Not only from that moment, but also just because of their entire relationship. So when their best friends are finally getting married, the two of them have to run into each other again during that whole wedding week. And it is interesting, to say the least. She is still holding a grudge, even though he was ready to have a blank slate. And they kind of pick up right where they left off. Their relationship is very interesting. I really enjoyed Ryan's character. He is a chef, I think, so you get a lot of food elements as well, which I really enjoyed. But June, honestly, was kind of annoying, only because she did a lot of things that were very embarrassing, and I just cannot deal with secondhand embarrassment. I can't handle it, so I had to kind of like tune out some of the book because she kept embarrassing herself, and I didn't like it. But they were really cute together. I was happy they ended up together. I gave this book 3 stars. It was definitely cute, but I just couldn't get past all of the embarrassment. I've been trying to read this next series for years, and I watched a TikTok one day that randomly gave me the urge to read this series, so I ran with it and I binged the entire thing in a day. So that is the what is it called? I don't even know. Folk of the Air series, which is Cruel Prince, Wicked King. I have them in the wrong order. Cruel Prince, Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. And like I said, I've been trying to read this series for years. I've literally had these for so long. These are probably some of the books I've owned the longest, and for some reason, never read. I mean, I read this book in 2020, I think, and I enjoyed it, but political intrigue at the time was not really my thing. I didn't really like it at all. I found it kind of boring, so I didn't end up continuing the series at that time. But since then, I've read a few books that had political intrigue that I really enjoyed. So when I saw that TikTok that like sparked my interest, I wanted to reread this because it had been a while, and I flew through this in like an hour because I didn't reread every detail. I remembered a lot, so I really just skimmed this one. But I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read Wicked King, also gave this one 4 stars. Really liked it. I gave Queen of Nothing 5 stars. So I am happy to say that I finally see why people love this series so much. It is, I don't know, the plot twists caught me off guard. Usually I am really good at seeing those coming, but I was caught off guard every single time, and each book had a cliffhanger, obviously except for the last book because it's the last one. The world building was amazing, and I felt so strongly about every character, whether I loved them or hated them. I had very strong feelings about them, which is really impressive considering these books are honestly pretty tiny for fantasy books, at least the fantasy books I have been reading. So the fact that I was that attached to these characters in a short amount of pages was really impressive to me. And yeah, I love Jude and Carden. I definitely see why people love them so much. Their relationship is so interesting because their dynamic changes so often, but it's just so fun to read about. And I was so sad when I finished Queen of Nothing because I didn't want to say goodbye to them, and I want to see so much more of them being together because they are like badass and they make such a stunning couple, and I want to see more of them. The most recent book I read, and the last one I'll have in this video, is Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon, which is the second book in this Ice Planet Barbarian series. I don't know if that's what it's called. I think it is. But they're all standalones, I think. So this follows a completely different couple, but it picks up actually like a little before where Ice Planet Barbarians left off. And this follows Liz, who is incredibly stubborn. She also like talks a lot, I feel like, but she's incredibly stubborn and like kind of prickly. And it also follows Rahash. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I think I am. But basically this is like hardcore enemies to lovers. He kidnaps her because he feels like she is his mate, and kidnaps her so that she will realize that they are mates and that they are going to be together. And it's very interesting because she is very mean to him, which is fair. I mean, she was kidnapped, but just watching their dynamic is so interesting. He's very overprotective, but it's just because he thinks she is so precious and has been waiting for his mate for so long that he cares about her a lot. And I really like it. I feel like some people might not like it because of how overprotective he is, but I really enjoyed it for what it was. The spice in here was great because they're learning about each other's bodies and how to make each other feel good, because obviously he's never been with a human, she's never been with an alien. So there's definitely things they both need to learn, and it keeps things really interesting. My favorite scene was probably her finding ways to make him feel good, just her exploring him. It was just a really good scene, and I had a great time. The world building was still really good. It was a lot easier to get into this one than it was to get into Ice Planet Barbarians because the world was already pretty much established, so that definitely helped. But I enjoyed it. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Okay, those are all the books that I read at the end of April and the beginning of May. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please click the notification bell so you know when I upload next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next video.